These are 5 defenses to stream in Week 11. Number 1 on the list is the Baltimore Ravens. Since Week 8, the Ravens defense has scored the 4th most fantasy points, tallying 4 sacks, 7 takeaways, and only allowing around 14 points per game during that span. And this week, they'll square off against an anemic Browns offense that's giving up the 5th most fantasy points per game to opposing defenses. Quarterback Dylan Gabriel just took 6 sacks in Week 10 and has generally failed to move the ball, and should have his hands full against the Ravens team that is not only getting healthier, but has every motivation to continue winning. They've ripped off 3 straight and are very much back in the hunt for the AFC North title. I think Baltimore extends their streak to 4 and are a defense worth holding on to, as they play the Jets in Week 12. Number 2 on the list is the Atlanta Falcons. I know the thought of trusting Atlanta against Carolina after what happened in Week 3 is frightening, but given how Atlanta's defense has performed the past couple of weeks, it's hard not to consider them. During these last 2 games, they've posted a fantasy-friendly 13 sacks and 4 takeaways against good offenses in the Patriots and the Colts. And now they'll square off against the Carolina team at home, who just lost to the Saints and are giving up the 8th most fantasy points per game to opposing defenses. Carolina has gone as their running game has, and this week should be no different. I know Atlanta just got gashed by Jonathan Taylor in Week 10 and are in the bottom 5 in terms of rush defense, so hesitating to start them is understandable, but if they can clean it up even a little, they should be able to generate some pressure on Bryce Young and force some mistakes. And if they do end up turning in another solid performance, they're also a defense worth holding on to, with matchups against the Saints and then the Jets over the next 2 weeks. Number 3 on the list is the Chicago Bears. The Bears defense is intriguing. They lead the league in takeaways with 20, but they're in the bottom 5 in terms of points allowed per game. Another thing going for them is that they've notably improved at getting to the quarterback. Before their bye, they were averaging around 1 sack per game, but in the last 5 weeks, they've averaged a little bit over 3. And this week they'll face off against a Minnesota team that's giving up the 3rd most fantasy points per game to opposing defenses. JJ McCarthy had another up and down performance in Week 10, throwing 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. He also took 1 sack, which is actually a step up from the 4.5 per game he was averaging before that. I would brace yourself for the Bears to give up points, but the hope is that they make up for it in other ways. Number 4 on the list is the Dallas Cowboys. I never thought the day would come when Dallas's defense would be worth consideration, but here we are. The Cowboys face the Raiders this week, and even though they've been hemorrhaging points and yards, they've quietly produced top 5 finishes in 2 of their last 3 games. And they may have an opportunity to make it 3 this week against the Raiders team that's giving up the 2nd most fantasy points per game to opposing defenses. Much of that is due to Geno Smith, who's thrown the 2nd most interceptions and has taken the 4th most sacks. He's also dealing with a quad injury and may be limited by that. I also think the addition of Quinnen Williams will give the Cowboys an immediate and much needed boost. Starting them is definitely a bit risky, but the upside is there. Number 5 on the list is the Green Bay Packers. The Packers face off against the Giants, who may be without Jackson Dart. Dart suffered a concussion in Week 10, and if he can't get clearance, Russell Wilson would likely get the start. The Packers haven't exactly been the model of consistency, but given the circumstances in New York, it may be worth taking a leap of faith. The Giants just let go of head coach Brian Daboll, and usually when a head coach gets fired mid-season, it either galvanizes the troops or demoralizes them. But given the injuries they're dealing with, my hunch is it's going to be the latter. They've lost Malik Neighbors, Cam Scadaboo, and now potentially Dart, leaving them paper thin at most skill positions on offense. Having said this, if Dart does somehow clear protocol, the Packers would fall out of the top 5. Those are 5 defenses to consider streaming in Week 11. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe and let me know which defenses you think we should keep an eye on in the comments below.